Implicit with every interaction you have with a narcissist is a question. And the question they ask with every interaction is, do you still believe the lie? Because their ability to manipulate you, deceive you, control you, that's all dependent on you buying into this idea that they're a kind, sweet, generous, innocent person who does these things to hurt you, but it's not really intentional. They didn't really mean it. Excuse me. And this is all a deception. This is all a game that they're playing. And you don't know that it's a game because you're sincere and you trust this person and you're communicating with them in good faith. And you assume, since you're sincere and you're communicating in good faith, that they're doing the same thing. And the sadistic reality, the cruel, cold reality, is they are absolutely not communicating in good faith. They're not being sincere. They don't have your best interest in mind. They're hurting you, and they know that they're hurting you. And what's more is that they feel entitled to do it. They they don't forgive. If something happens in the relationship, if you do something, they keep score. They don't forgive. They don't examine themselves. They don't look at the relationship and try to figure out how to heal and repair the relationship, because the relationship doesn't matter to them. They're very transactional. They are competitive. If you've been in a relationship with the narcissist, you know how competitive they are. They keep score. They don't like to lose. In fact, if they don't think they can win at a certain game, at a particular game, they won't participate in those type of activities, those type of games, especially if it's a one-on-one game. Now, if it's a team game, then they may be more inclined to do it because you have a bunch of losers. But you always have losers on one side or the other. But if it's a game where it's individual against individual and they are likely to lose, then they won't want to play those type of games. And it's not just a matter of dislike or, well, no, I don't feel like being beaten. You can tell it's something deeper than that. If you've been in a relationship with a narcissist for a prolonged period of time, it's something much deeper. It's like to lose that game would trigger a deep sense of inferiority for them. And the relationship that you have with them, in that relationship, they see it as a game that they cannot lose, a game that they want to win. And so when you're in that devaluation stage, the love bomb is one thing. That's where they set the stage, they set everything up to match their fantasy, the fantasy they have in their mind about who they are, about what the relationship is, and about who you are. And they try to make that fantasy work, and they engage in the fantasy, they jump into the fantasy, and they try to just get lost in that fantasy. It's almost like being partially asleep, where you're halfway dreaming and they don't want to be awakened by reality. And every time you step out of character, every time you criticize them or you point out something that isn't working in the relationship, it's like you're waking them up. It's like you're nudging them out of their fantasy world. But they enjoy being in their fantasy world. Their fantasy world is preferable to reality. They really don't want to deal with reality. And so this is a pattern that goes back for them to childhood, where reality wasn't something that they wanted to face. It wasn't something they wanted to deal with. It was too painful. And to escape that pain, they constructed the fantasy world. And in that fantasy world, they were always the hero or the victim or the martyr. And they just got to a point where they were engaging in fantasy so much that they came to rely on it as a comfort and as a blanket. And so when you're in that relationship with them and they start to devalue you and they start to criticize you and attack you and do all of the vicious things they do, the gaslighting, the projection, the stonewalling, where they're withdrawing attention and affection, withholding attention and affection, and they're just starving you, and you really don't know until you figure the game out. You really don't know what's going on. You think it's the normal ups and downs of what people go through in relationships. And if you don't have an example of good relationships to kind of measure what's happening, or if you don't have a support network that you can talk to about some of the things that are going on in that relationship, if the narcissist has you isolated to where you are by yourself trying to figure all of this out, it can make you crazy. It can make you feel like you're spinning out of control, like you don't know which way is up. Because when you bring up an issue to a narcissist, you're trying to sincerely resolve a concern that you have about their behavior or about the nature of what's happening in the relationship. Excuse me. They're going to use Darvo, which is deny, attack, and then reverse the role of victim and defender. That's what they do. They're not going to take responsibility or accountability for their part in what's going on in that relationship. And they'll even just critique little things that you say, or even if it's a grammatical error in your bringing up the issue, when you're bringing up the issue, and then they'll hone in on that in order to distract you. And maybe even start to talk about, let's say you have a self-limiting belief. They'll attack your self-limiting beliefs. If you think that you're not good enough or you're not smart enough or something like that, then they'll hone in on that and they'll say, see, you can't even speak right. You're making all these grammatical errors, and then they'll just hone in on that. They will attack you in whatever way is best to get you off of them, to get you distracted. And by the time they get done with the word salads and just the attack on your character, on your intelligence, on your body, whatever it is that is triggering for you, they're going to attack it. And they'll use other people. They'll triangulate and tell you that, yeah, everybody knows that you're the problem. And what they're trying to do is they're trying to control your reality. They're trying to control and change your perception of reality and make you think that everybody's against you and everybody agrees with them and everybody knows you're the problem. And as long as you think that this is somebody who is normal, this is somebody who loves you, then you really don't stand a chance, because that is the primary deception in the entire relationship. It's the keystone of their deception. And so it's analogous to a game of chess. Because when you play chess, your opponent is just you and your opponent. And you're in front of this chessboard, and you're making these moves. They're moves and they're counter moves. And no no chess player, especially if you play at a higher level, if you're in a tournament or something like that, you don't talk to your opponent about your plan, about your strategy. If you're serious about winning, and narcissists are serious about winning, they're very competitive. And so chess players don't reveal their plans to each other. It's strategic, it's methodical, and it's well thought out if they're good. And the only way to really figure out what your opponent is doing is to look at the pieces, look at how the pieces are moving, look at how the pieces are set up. It's a language in and of itself. When the pieces are positioned in such a way as to threaten your queen, you don't have to ask your opponent, are you about to attack my queen? Even if you did ask them that question, they're not going to tell you the truth. They're going to try to do something to distract you, to misdirect you, and to get you to focus on something else. In fact, sometimes I was in this chess game one time with this older player, called him the Gray Wolf, and he made a move that on the surface looked like a mistake, and he even made this gesture like, oh, like he had messed up in the game. And had I just moved immediately, then it would have been devastating for me, because he was making a sacrifice in order to set me up. And that's the whole name of the game. If a person is telling you something with their words in a chess game, usually it's a misdirection. It's not to give you information to help you to win. And it's precisely the same thing when you're engaged in a relationship with a narcissist. It's like a battle. It's not a relationship. It's not healthy. It's not love in that relationship. It's transactional. It's about them getting access to your resources. It's about them being able to control your resources. They want to control how you feel. They want to control what you believe. They want to control what you think. And they want to control your behavior. They want to control every aspect of how you engage in that relationship with them. And so you have to learn to look at how the pieces are moving. You have to see how the pieces are set up and draw your own conclusions based on objective reality. You have to be logical when you're dealing with a narcissist. You have to learn to see the patterns and not rely on their words, because they're liars. They're always lying, deceiving, misdirecting, giving you partial truths, half truths, in order to convince you that they're someone who loves you. They're someone who is for you and wants to see you win. And that's because they want you to trust them. A relationship that's healthy relies on trust. And if you trust them, they use that trust to exploit you, to deceive you, to misdirect you, and to gain control over you. And so the key point is that you have to get to a point in that relationship, if you're ever going to really escape the fantasy world, and just get out of that dangerous, abusive cycle just long enough to really see clearly enough to get some distance and to really see what's going on, you have to see the patterns, you have to see the moves that they're making. How are they prioritizing you? Are they prioritizing you? Do their actions match up with their words? You have to start really evaluating that, in journaling and having some sort of way to measure what's real and what's not real in that relationship, because it's all about deception. And as long as you believe the lie, then they're going to continue to exploit you and abuse you.